Hello, here with you, Anna Tutova, co-founder of Coins Telegram, and our very honored guest, Prime Minister of Liechtenstein, Daniel Risch. Great to have you here, Daniel.
Thank you for the invitation and good morning.
Yeah, and Liechtenstein has been always a leader in different innovations and as well has been a hub for blockchain companies, and it's one of the first countries in the world which adopted specific legislation on crypto and blockchain with adoption of Liechtenstein Blockchain Act or Token and Trustworthy Technology Service Provider Act. So we'll talk more with Daniel about the developments on crypto and blockchain, and as well different support programs for the entrepreneurship and SMEs. So yeah, let's start. But I would like first to know more about your background. I've seen that you were first in academia, then you were CMO of Unique AG, as well Liechtensteinische Post, and then eventually you got into government service. So why did you decide to switch to public service?
Well, as you already mentioned a little bit about our country, it's a rather small country, and it's quite common in Liechtenstein that the members of not of parliament but of the government come from private sector, and they change to the government, and after 4, 8, or 12 years they change back to private sector. I believe this makes a lot of sense in how we run our state with entrepreneurial spirit as well. And back then, some 7 years ago now, I was just asked if I could imagine to join government after the elections, as they thought they need leaders from private sector, and I agreed, and so it went, and I became prime minister some 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's great when people who have experience in the real business, in the private sector, take positions in the government and implement and can solve the real problems of entrepreneurs and support the businesses in the right way. So what are the main priorities of your government for this year?
So not only for this year, but for the whole period we're in charge. So these 4 years legislation is we have a strong focus on sustainability, and sustainability not only in terms of green ideas, but also in terms of social projects, also in terms of financing and finances of the state. You can be sustainable, meaning yeah, only give out as much money as you earned. That's sustainable. That's the main point of sustainability, also in nature. And this also, maybe not on the first side, but on a second or third side, brings in that we see ourselves as a innovative not only government, but as an innovative country, because we think you can only be sustainable if you rethink things, if you invent, if you push things forward. You're not sustainable if you're not inventing, if you just stay there and say, well, everything is good and it has to stay as it is. But you have to move forward to be sustainable. That's in the very core of sustainability as well. And therefore, when we look into now it's the last year of the 4 years period we're responsible. There's a lot things we want to finish, and we want to start for the next ones. So it's a broad set of things we have to do. And one thing that is not so commonly known, we are a member of the European Economic Area. That means the 27 EU states of the European Union. Iceland, Norway, and Liechtenstein form the 30 states of the European Economic Area. This means that over 12,000 law acts of the European Union are applicable in Liechtenstein. And we will talk about the MiCA regulations and other stuff later on. So this means we have to implement also the EU regulation. And this is a lot of work for us as a government, but also for Parliament. So there's a whole lot to do in the
Yeah.
months ahead.
That's important. And on the side of sustainability, you told that you can support in the way that the budget the government has and not to exceed it. So can you tell more about different programs, initiatives you have aimed at promoting entrepreneurship and small business development in Liechtenstein?
Actually, the answer is no, because we don't have initiatives to bring startups or companies to Liechtenstein so they can run their business here. And this sounds a little bit strange because every country has initiatives like these. But we don't. And the reason for that is that we believe that the framework condition for economy, for companies, should be good for everyone. So
Mhm.
for the companies that are here for 50 years or 100 years, as well as for new companies. So this means Liechtenstein as a country believes in some principles that say we take only a small part of the companies and the people, but we also give only little. Meaning the taxes are low, the framework conditions are good. Entrepreneurs should have room for maneuver, I would say, and therefore there are no financial supports for startups or financial supports for research and development. But
Mhm.
the companies should keep more of their money to spend more of their money for the things they believe in. So I mean, there is a little bit of support, like in digitization. You can have digitization checks, we call it. So if you have transformational programs or projects ahead, you can apply for some support, but it is in the, I would say, in the area of 10 or 20,000 Swiss francs, and you have to prove that you did what you applied for, but this is only in a very, very limited space. And for the rest, we really believe it is important that you have only a small portion of state and a
Mhm.
big portion of entrepreneurship. And this is something that made us successful to this part. And one thing that is maybe special, I sometimes say, because of our small size, the only natural resource Liechtenstein has is short ways. So this means it is relatively simple. As for you, you can talk to the Prime Minister of Liechtenstein if you just ask him, and he's he's responsive. This is true for a whole administration. So if you need somebody, you have an idea and you'd like to bring it in, or
Mhm.
as for regulation, if there has somebody had the idea to come up with a token law, then we listen, we try to understand, and we push it forward. And for this reason, we have it is called like the Agency for Financial Innovations and Digitization, that is with my ministry. And people have ideas how we can proceed also in terms of regulation, can address this agency, and can talk through, and they get answers, and sometimes they get solutions, sometimes they even get new laws. So this is how we manage, I would say, our country.
Yeah, so you're quite open to the dialogue with the private sector and as well, so I understand the support from the regulation side and from the low taxation, right?
I think this dialogue is key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and let's switch more and talk more about the crypto digital assets side. So last
Mhm.
year in May, you announced that the Liechtenstein government would accept Bitcoin as a payment method for certain government services. So has it been already enabled, and why have you made such decision, and what are the potential implications of it?
Yeah, so this small for us it is a small example, shows how we just move things or move forward. It was last summer when one of our team members came with the idea to not only accept Swiss francs and euros with the online payments, but he said, well, we're so strong in the whole token and crypto area. Why don't we accept it? And then we asked ourselves, well, why don't we accept it? Or is it possible from a technical side? How would we handle it? Do we have our own wallets, or do we just exchange it technically when the payment is done? To which amount do we accept it? And then we went through all these questions and said, well, let's do it. And so in September we did it. It's not a big portion of the services that are paid by crypto by now, but it is possible. We learned a lot in the way ahead. There was a little bit of, I would say, of a hype around it in the crypto sector. Oh, Liechtenstein is accepting it. Is it the new national currency? No, it's not. But we just and there were. It's like always. You have people, they see more the chances, and you have them the ones that see the threats. And from the threat side, it was, well, crypto is for criminals only, and we say, well, if it would be for criminals only, it wouldn't last so long, and we are proceeding in regulating on different levels. So everything is for good and is for bad, and we believe more in the good and think we have to regulate where it could be for the bad, and this is just I think it's mainly a mindset thing, how you proceed, how you push things forward, and for us it was a small step, an important one, and one we would take again.
So do you now accept as a payment for government services only Bitcoin, or as well any stable coins?
No, it's an array of currencies we just activated, and there are some talks in Switzerland about the Swiss stable coin. We're in contact with them. It's not realized yet, but this is something we would accept too.
And how does it work currently on the technical side? Do you integrated any payment gateways which immediately convert Bitcoin into fiat?
Yes, that's exactly what you just mentioned. It is a payment gateway. We book it with in Swiss francs because this is our national currency. So it is exchanged when you pay. That's technically the point. Yeah. So that's why we said it's not a big thing actually. Yeah.
But still, it attracts more people to learn more about the country, and as well attracts more businesses to come.
Yeah, that was the also a little bit the point to say, well, if you can do it, why shouldn't you? Why not? That was more the question. Yeah.
And we have as well some countries which adopted Bitcoin as a legal tender, such as El Salvador or Central African Republic. And as well, we see even some examples of separate cities which adopted Bitcoin and stable coins as legal tender. For example, in Switzerland, it's Lugano. So what are your thoughts on their moves?
Well, I think that's interesting on the one side, but it's not something we as a country would do in a whole. I mean, if you Lugano is really something we looked at, but El Salvador has a complete different starting point. I mean, we for 100 years now, Liechtenstein uses the Swiss franc since the 1980s. We have a currency contract with Switzerland, and we have a very stable currency with the Swiss franc. So there was no point in having in changing the currency to whether or not a fiat or to a digital or crypto currency. We're very happy being in this in the Swiss franc zone, but. And that's the big but. Bitcoin is there, other cryptocurrencies are there, and you can't just say, well, we're not interested. You have to cope with it. You have to experience. You have to have experience with it, and you can't have experience if you're not using it. That's just my strong belief.
Yeah, that's true. And as well, El Salvador, for example, invested part of the money on their government's balance sheet into Bitcoin. So would you ever consider with Liechtenstein to do that?
Well, we checked it. I must admit, we have as you might know, we don't have any debts, but we have some reserve accounting to 2.5 billion. So it's always the 1 to 3 times as high as our annual budget. We have that's by law, have in reserve, and this is invested in diverse categories. Professionally invested. And we talked it through and said, well, should we have a small portion of it or also a bigger portion invested in crypto? And then there's a board of very experienced people, and we have as a country a rather conservative approach to how we invest, and this comes from the point that this money does not belong to the government or the parliament. It's the money that belongs to the people of Liechtenstein. Therefore, you have to be conservative, and we decided by not until now not to go into rather volatile sectors, and it is a volatile sector. So what you do with your private money is you can do things like that, but you shouldn't, from my point of view, do it with the money of a state, and therefore we did not go into that.
I think on the rising market, it's fine. Like everybody criticized before El Salvador that they invested government's money and Bitcoin went down, but now everything is rising, so it's not a bad bet.
Well, but it's a bet, and it's a risky bet, I would say, and yeah, you have to, it's always about the risk profile when you invest.
And as well, when do you discover crypto first personally, and do you hold any cryptocurrency yourself?
I don't know the year exactly, but I think so about, for me it was less the cryptocurrency part of it, but more like the as I studied, I did my study in information systems and information science. I think it was in the 12 or 13 when I came over the concept of the blockchain or the distributed approach. And from a technical side, I think this is a unbelievable, convincing concept. And I don't know when I invested first in crypto, but yes, I myself hold some crypto assets, but not in a. It's not that big, so I still have to work.
Can you share maybe what holdings do you have? What altcoins?
No, that's my personal secret.
Okay. And in what do you see the value of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency?
Well, also if you look especially, so I mean there's two things in cryptocurrencies, just from a conceptual point of view, not having centralized entities where the flow of information and data go through, but to have it distributed. This makes a lot of sense from a conceptual side and in terms of cost. I mean, we have some issues technically because it's slow and expensive on a research side, but I think newer concepts resolve this rather good. So from this point of view, you have diverse advantages, and regulatory, it's not an advantage. It's a little bit tough. So that's the reason why we came with a new regulation. And if we go to Bitcoin as a very special currency, the fact that it is limited is like, this is actually that's what money was when it was still bound to gold. So you could not have more money than you had gold, and this scarcity, or this limitation, was and is something people can believe in, and gives some kind of stability. One could say, well, but Bitcoins are not stable, but that's true. But it gives you, from a conceptual side, and I think we will see this only in some 5 or 10 years, but it gives you some kind of solid ground that is very convincing, or will be very convincing when we get there.
Mm-hmm. And as well, if we talk on the side of the blockchain technology itself, is blockchain implemented into any government services or government entities in Liechtenstein? And what role do you envision for blockchain technology plays in Liechtenstein's economy and society in the coming years?
There's some projects that are running currently. There's no services currently running solely or on a blockchain, but there's there's the project in Switzerland with Liechtenstein called the car dossier, where you have the registrations of cars. That's running there. There is some other services that we will bring out until summer. That's at least that's planned. And what's important from a governmental point of view, or from a services point of view, even though I just mentioned from a technical side, it's very convincing. It is not that you just should throw everything you can do on a database to a blockchain. It does not make sense for all services. It does make sense for certain services, and you have to find these services, and you have to be open when you come to update or upgrade or bring in new services. You have to be open with which concept you run. But it was not the point, at least that's my belief, from a technical point of view, that you say, well, everything we have stored somehow now should go to the blockchain, because it just does not make sense for all concepts.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you mentioned Mika before, and now we have some kind of unified approach to the crypto regulation in Europe. And before, Liechtenstein was a leading jurisdiction for the crypto regulation. So how does currently Liechtenstein position itself within the broader European landscape in terms of blockchain and cryptocurrency regulations? And so how do you maintain the status of the leading jurisdiction for digital assets companies?
Well, being a leader in terms of an early mover, you can build up experience in this area. So we are quite happy that the MiCA regulation is now coming, and we can still have some good points, because we were quite early. The MiCA regulation is pretty similar to what we did in Liechtenstein, and we also had close talks and supported in Brussels that the MiCA regulation is where it is now. But I mean, to be honest, the markets and crypto assets regulation does only take a part of the whole token economy, an important part, no question, but it's only a part of it. And we believe that you can use the blockchain in many more areas that are not yet regulated on a European side, as for example, in the area of intellectual property. This is an area where we believe you can use a token and and the whole contract thing even more so. And so we believe in the Mika area we're still good positioned with a lot of know-how in our country, but we have a little broader approach and are looking for things we can push to push forward the whole story.
And maybe you can as well share some statistics, how many blockchain companies do you have currently registered in Liechtenstein, and is it ongoing interest for the companies to come to set up in Liechtenstein?
Well, I don't have the exact numbers here. From my point, it's a double-digit number of companies registered at the moment. There's still, I would say, it's maybe in numbers over the last years we had a peak, and it's not in numbers. We're not on the top level currently, but in quality. I would say the companies that ask to come to Liechtenstein or to have or that also come in quality, it is much better than back in 2020. So from this point of view, we are quite happy how it proceeds. On the other side, if we have a broader look on our country, we have 45% of our GDP comes from industrial services and manufacturing, 25% approximately from financial sector, and the rest is just spread. And with this, we are one of the most heavily industrialized countries in the world. So if somebody asks us, so how big is the portion of your GDP coming from tech services and blockchain, I must admit it will be down at 1 to 2% of our GDP, just because the whole economy is extremely diversified and extremely strong. That explains a little bit the numbers.
And as well, Swiss National Bank last year started the pilot for the wholesale digital currency with UBS and other banks. So what's your take on central bank digital currencies?
Well, I think the wholesale approach that the Swiss National Bank is following is rather important. We are in close contact as the Swiss National Bank is our national bank as well, and we know what they're doing there. Other national banks take another approach, going more to the not to the wholesale but to the retail part of it. There are some private initiatives, as I mentioned before, in Switzerland as well, so that also normal people like we can use it. And I think for the acceptance and the understanding, this public or retail offerings are as important, but from a banking perspective and from a national bank perspective, I really believe that the approach that the Swiss National Bank is taking is a good one.
So do you think that retail CBDCs will be relevant and that people will be willing to use those?
I believe so, yeah.
Don't you have any concerns that like about surveillance, like it's in China that all the transactions are controlled by the government and etc.?
Well, the comparison to China, I mean, I don't wanna comment on what China is doing, but I mean, we have just, I would say, a different approach, different values in Europe, especially when it comes to surveillance. And from this point of view, for me, it is not so much about surveillance of the state, but more of, and it has to do with each other, more of acceptance for the people and cost of transactions and easiness, how to use it. This is from my point of view, this should be the convincing thing. And I really believe in this respect. If you have different offerings from private companies in the retail stablecoin area, it's maybe better than to have state national bank owned retail solution, where people think, well, it's everything is they know everything about my transactions. I don't think this is the point, but there needs to be a financial market authority, and there needs to be some checks where you can see it. On the other hand, you have to cash still, and as I know from Austria, Switzerland, Germany, so our surrounding countries, nobody is willing to quit cash. So therefore, if you have a digital thing that is similar to it, why should it be worse than the real cash? I can't see the point.
Like Sweden eliminates the cash, some other countries too.
Yeah, I know, but I really don't believe in Central Europe this will be the case for the next 10, 20 years. But that's what I believe. Maybe I'm wrong.
And now we see as well big popularity of another technology of artificial intelligence. So what is your stance on AI, and does Liechtenstein government implement AI in any government services, government entities? And as well, for example, I have seen that just a few days ago, the University of Liechtenstein announced its plans to anchor AI in higher education. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, from a technical point of view, I remember almost 25 years ago at the University of Zurich, I was already we already discussed about artificial intelligence, embedded artificial intelligence, and so on. So it is not as new as it seems if you look at on a hype level, but the new offerings that everybody can use it, and it's convincing because it seems like it talks to you and it gives you information and it's generative and brings new things. I mean, that's astonishing, so as everybody can use it now, we have to cope with it differently, and because the concepts go much further than they meant maybe some 10 years ago, there will be, or there has to be, some kind of regulation. So what we did in Liechtenstein was from a governmental point of view, for our administration, we came out last summer or autumn with like a guideline how to use artificial intelligence within the administration. So we did not forbid it, because we just said, well, we are aware that people are using it. So if you say, well, you're not allowed to, that's always the wrong approach. So we gave them guidelines how to use it if they use it. And we also, yeah, I would say, told them, well, go out and use it. It is not if it's used the right way, it's a good thing to do. You mentioned the university; they are looking into it. Our companies are using it. Some for years. Some are now trying to get into it. And when it comes to regulation on a more EU side or on a broader side, we are. It's not like with the blockchain technology. We will not be a front runner in this respect. Otherwise, we're too late now. And I believe there are two things. Regulation often is too late. That's the one thing. And the other thing is, it really also lies in the hands of the companies that and the people that are how should I say, that bring the new services, that bring the new technology, that they are self-committed, I would say, like Google always said, don't be evil, that they do it for good. So it is not only with the regulators, but also with the ones that do the offerings, that we bring it to the right direction. And I mentioned it before, with other technology, it's always chances and threats. and we should focus on the chances, trying to have the threats regulated, because it's there, and if it's there, people are using it. The good ones are using it for the good. The bad ones are using it for the bad, and therefore you have to have a focus on the bad side.
Yeah, it's always important to have the right approach to regulation, not to stop the innovation.
True. That's the most important thing. Yeah.
And as well, I would like to talk about the role of Liechtenstein in regional and international diplomacy. So what role does Liechtenstein envision itself playing in the international diplomacy, and particularly in Europe and amid the current war of Russia and Ukraine? And thank you as well for the continuous support of Ukraine.
Well, as you know, we are a rather small country, no army, between Austria and Switzerland. So one could think, well, a country like this is not making a point, but that's wrong. So we really believe, as a small country, we want to give more than is maybe expected from our side. Currently, we lead the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, where Ukraine is member as well, where we have 46 member states. So not the 27 of the European Union, but the 46. Russia was excluded after the beginning, and now we're leading the Council of Europe, and we try to cope with all the crises we have in Europe, and also with the war. But one point I like to make is more on a more international level. Some 3 months or 2 months after Russia invaded Ukraine, we came with our veto initiative on the United Nations in New York. We brought it in. The veto initiative is about the veto in the Security Council, and by then, if one is calling the veto, it was just denied and did not go further. And as Russia is a veto power, they can do whatever they like to do there. And with the veto initiative that was accepted by the General Assembly, after every veto in the Security Council at the United Nations, the General Assembly mandatory comes together and discusses this veto. So this means the veto is no longer the last word, but the General Assembly, at least, I mean, it's you can say it's not a big step because the veto is still there. But this was an initiative brought in by Liechtenstein, broadly supported by European countries, including Ukraine, went through, and since then, this makes a difference for the functioning of the United Nations. It's still not functioning in broad terms as we'd like it to have, because we want a peace on earth. That's the main focus of the United Nations. But just a small example how we think we can do in diplomatic terms, can try to help for the functioning of the international institutions, the rule of law, and in the end also democracy, because that's the core values. And even though Ukraine is so much bigger than our small state, I really believe that these values, that the rule of law, democracy, human rights, they are so strong, and this is something we heavily support. And we are not a EU member, but member of the European Economic Area. Also, the sanctions of the European Union were not directly applicable in Liechtenstein, but it was clear for us from the very beginning, from the first minute, that we will stand with Ukraine, that we will stand with the European Union sanctions. So we took over everything as fast as possible, because we clearly stand on the side of Ukraine.
Yeah, thanks for the solidarity with Ukraine. And in your opinion, what Ukraine does need to do to get more military assistance from the Europe?
Well, I really believe that that Ukraine is doing an amazing work, an amazing job. Also, President Zelensky is on a diplomatic level is doing a unbelievable job. I think that Ukraine should stay strong and move on and try to convince the European countries and the US to keep the support as high as it is. And as I said, unfortunately, we can't help in these terms. We can help on a humanitarian side, on a financial side, and that's what we do heavily. But I don't know what's the good solution on the question you posed.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see the soon beneficial resolution for Ukraine. And
True.
you as well announced that you wouldn't run for the next re-election in 2025 Liechtenstein general election. So what are your further plans?
So that was a hard a change of topics. um, yeah, that was just a personal decision on my side after 8 years in government. As I mentioned at the very beginning of our interview, that government members often come from private sector, come to government, and then after some years go back to private sector. And from my point of view, our country is doing good. We were able to bring forward a whole array of topics that were important to me. And as the term ends next year, it was important for me to early inform my party that they know they have to look for other people. So I'm supporting the party to have a good the next prime minister, and for me, I will go back to private sector. But
So
I'm
are you thinking to go back to the private sector into any specific industry?
well, it will be somehow something in maybe in technology, because that's where I come from. But there's no clear plan now, because it's 13 months to go, and I'm really proud and happy to be prime minister of this great country. So I'd like to push forward a lot of things during the next 13 months, and then we'll see.
Got it. Thank you for your contributions and thank you for sharing your expertise and experience with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.